and welcome to the July 2nd Downers Grove Village Council meeting. If you'd please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. April, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Rankin? Here. Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Newstead?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Thank you. For those of us in attendance, we have copies of our agenda on both sides of the room, as well as informational packets on items we'll be discussing tonight. Item 3 on our agenda is minutes of council meetings. We have 2 minutes to look at tonight. Council meeting minutes of June 18th, 2013, and the long-range plan meeting minutes of June 18th, 2013. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Minutes pass unanimously. Okay, on to item number 4, which is public comment. These are general comments of matters not appearing on our agenda tonight, and the protocol usually is to come down to our podium and give us your name and address, and it is your opportunity to speak to your elected officials. Any public comments tonight?
Good evening. My name is Richard McMahon. I live at 5412 Regents Park Road, Rockford, Illinois, along with Downers Grove, but I am a corporate citizen of Downers Grove. In December 2010, Cannon Energy, which I represent, purchased 81 ExxonMobil stations from ExxonMobil. One of them sits in your community on the corner of 64th and Belmont. Our job is to raise and rebuild stores that I determine are worthy of that and repurpose other units. We've been talking to the folks who recently purchased the shopping center around that, our store, and have come close to an agreement on how we would acquire extra property to expand our unit by totally knocking it down, ripping the tanks out, and building a state-of-the-art store there. I also have a contract to purchase land from a gentleman in your community at the corner of Ogden and Cross. It's on southeast corner. It's an auto dealership, used car dealership. What happens here on Ogden and Cross will determine what happens at 63rd and Belmont as far as my ability to gauge Downers Grove's willingness to support us in improving these properties. I've met at the mayor's direction with a gentleman now, Mr. Casson, who's in charge of economic development, or is an outside advisor, I'm not quite sure how it works, a month ago, 3 June. I have not heard back from him since. These are the questions I've posed. Number 1, will the community support the rezoning of that property on the corner of Ogden and Cross for use into a convenience store, a large convenience store, not the typical one that just sells cigarettes, but the state-of-the-art that we're picking up from the advancement industry down south. It'll be 6,800 square feet. That's twice as large as the Furnace. There's none like that in the entire Chicago area. We have a 110-foot long car wash with a tunnel car wash, and 10 MPs out front. It would be something to be proud of. It would generate a lot of sales tax revenue, and it's just what we do in our business. There were 2 things one thing I was told was the community probably wouldn't support it because it would be in direct competition with existing units such as the Shell and potentially the Power Mart when he rebuilds up the street. I find this anti-American almost. I didn't serve the armed forces standing on the DMZ facing $1.5 million North Koreans had in 1975 because I like socialism. I don't know who gets to pick the winners and losers. I thought in this economy, in the United States, it was the economy. That's being held up several times as a reason for the community not wanting us to build a new store in that area. That Shell station, I saw that Shell station, when the land was bought and it was rebuilt many years ago. It hasn't been improved. You haven't had much improvement in any of the facilities in your community, in our industry. And we're offering an opportunity to do that. It's the American way. It's competitive destruction, creative destruction. The second thing I asked for is, will the community consider, as many other communities have reconsidered, granting us a license to sell beer and wine? This isn't a 1,400 square foot C-store which offers three things, including beer and wine after hours to minors when they can afford to do so. This is a 6,800 square foot, $4 million facility. I haven't gotten an answer on that. It's important. Elmhurst has changed. The county, DuPage County has changed, and I can throw a list of people, and I have advanced that list to the community, of communities that have rethought it from the days when they did not like it. I can't find any distinction between driving to a liquor store or driving to a grocery store to buy beer and wine versus going to a large convenience store, 1,600 square feet. I have a timeline, and my seller has a timeline in which I need to make some decisions to move ahead. So I would request some consideration of this and someone get back to me in a timely fashion. Yesterday I was in the city of McHenry with a similar move, and I got resolution by the end of the day today. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your willingness to listen to me.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. The Downers Grove EDC is a partner of our village, and we also have our own community development department here. If you'd be so kind as to leave a business card or some contact information with any of the folks, Mr. Dave Briner maybe over at the side table, we'd be sure to respond to your questions as quickly as we can. Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comment or input tonight?
Good evening. My name is Jim Crawford. I live at 201 56th Street, Downers Grove, but I'm actually here tonight as a representative from St. Mary's of Goston, like I was about 3 weeks ago. St. Mary's has joined a group, an informal group, Mr. Newstad, you understand this, of about a dozen churches. And these churches are trying to figure out how to organize themselves to continue to communicate their disappointment in the storm utility fee. At this present time, they've actually developed a set of talking points, and for the next several council meetings, different churches will start appearing at the city council meetings and expressing their views and their points of views, and St. Mary's happens to be first on the list, and that's why I'm here today. So I have several points. I'll go through them quickly. I'm sure you've thought of most of them and know what to say or know what to do with them anyway, but I thought I'd start. The first one, and obviously it's the core of the issue, the separation of church and state. We do understand that the separation of the utility, and by creating that function, it is no longer a tax, but in reality, it is a government service, a service that was delivered by the community, by the city, and it was funded by taxes. You move that out of that element to continue to grow it and to do the equality argument, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But in essence, to many of the people and many of the pastors of these different churches, to them it's a clear issue of the heart of our Constitution, which is taxation of churches are separated in this country, and by applying this function as a fee versus a tax, they believe that's a dangerous precedent. The second thing that they're kind of worried about is that the amount of money. Now, I know that after talking to a couple of people on the council, there really is no specific idea of 15 years, 10% increase per year, although some of those numbers have been kicked around in the past, maybe at a hearing or two. And then that actually, Rule 72, right? You divide the interest rate into 72, tells you how many times you double. That's a 2.5 times increase in the amount of money you're going to run. Some people crunching that number thinks that becomes almost equal to the total amount of budget that is currently being run by Downers Grove, and that scares them. But in essence is, you have created utility. And by creating that utility, you now own the utility. And then the question becomes then, not necessarily worried about this council, but councils of the future, what's our safeguards to make sure that that utility does not pass on excessive increases, 15 years, 10% a year, like it's been kicked around, to meet the needs of the future, whether appropriate or not. The safeguards don't list, right? There's no public utility to commission to hold those increases into place. There's no free market services of competition to hold those prices down. And I think we all remember what Rahm Emanuel did to us with the water rates, right? No recourse, had to take them, 80, 90% increase across the board for all the suburbs, and we had to roll back it. No utility commission to hold accountability for the price increase. It raised grave concerns. The third issue is really the financial burden. The financial burden that's placed upon these parishes, these worship communities. These communities provide great services, as many of you know, because you participate in them in so many of your own churches. They feed the people who can't feed themselves. They shelter people who can't shelter themselves, whether it's the PADS organization that we're recognized, whether it's housing accountability and programs that allow people, the homeless, to find homes, whether it's counseling. When you put a financial burden, which I know you realize, but when you put that financial burden on the church or on any of the worship centers, that money's got to come from somewhere. They have to cut something. Plant and equipment is fixed, as many of you know from your own businesses. So that means then services have to be cut. Those services are going to fall upon those most needy in our community. And yet the idea was to try to create the utility to put the burden equally across. But by imposing that duty on the churches, in essence, you're beginning to harm those who can't necessarily take care of themselves, because the churches don't have the ability to go out and increase their revenues. They can certainly ask for more money, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the fact of the matter is their revenue streams are fixed towards contributions that come to them. The ability to pass on those increases are severely limited. And that kind of raises an issue then on fairness. If you place a burden on a church that is then providing services to the community, but then exempt the Park District, which is a large government entity. Remember the idea of the utility, to share the burden of expense across all entities, residential, commercial, and government entities. I admire the fact that you put yourselves in that exact same boat. You're assessing that fee on the government of Downers Grove, but then you exempt the Park District. Now, I think I kind of understand why we understand in this essence that the Park District spends millions and millions of dollars every year in retention ponds, right? Part of the overall plan for the storm water runoff. But you know, in essence, the Park District has a duty. That duty is to serve. That service is to build gathering places for our community. Fishing, boating, the ability to create paths and areas around large bodies of water are those tools that allow us to build those places. The actual duty is the gathering places. The benefit, the service, is actually helping manage the water runoff. But to sit there and say that that service, that value to the community, carries more weight to justifying an exemption versus the churches, the worship centers, where people are feeding people, where people are sheltering people, where people are taking care of those who can't take care of themselves, that service into the same community doesn't carry the benefit of an exemption, really does raise an issue of fairness. And it should be discussed. And then finally, the next area that I like to talk about, and I promise I will be quick. If we're sharing the burden equally, just follow this math for me for a little bit. We think anywhere from 45 to 55% of Downers Grove's residents actually attend a worship place on a regular basis. Now, just using my church's experience, because I'm on the finance committee with Mr. Ahmed, who's here behind me, about a third of the people who actively participate in an organization, a place of worship, actually contribute to that organization. So if you have 5,000 members, and half of them come and a third of them contribute it, you're getting contributions from 800 or 900 of those people. And those numbers will, I believe, reflect quite frankly across all the churches. You're posing a duty on a church. That church then turns around and has to make that fiscal responsibility on its members. Those members are the people who choose to worship. And not only the ones who choose to worship, the ones who choose to participate. Thus, that expense, that burden has now fallen on a significantly smaller amount of people. If you eliminate the churches, you give them the exemptions, either bring the Park District back in, i.e., all property owners contribute to the Park District, thus equally sharing the expense across all residents, or if you believe that that is truly a warranted exemption, then apply the amount of money that you're applying to the nonprofits, put that then back against the overall population. The distribution doesn't fall to the 20 or 30% who choose to worship, who choose to participate. That burden then falls across the total community, i.e. shared burden based on usage across the community, which I believe is the goal of this utility. And finally, then I just want to close on just a couple of procedural notes. I'm sure you're all hearing different issues. Somebody applying for a credit, too much hassle, gives up on the credit, amount of money, $300 for an application fee to fight for a credit. just some thought maybe, or some help in maybe better defining what should be applied for credit for, significantly reduce the application fees to get them, i.e. you're trying to make a stance on a brand new utility and send a message to the community, the ability to operate effectively underneath that community and understand the expenses would go a long way, and maybe waiving the fees for a year. Understanding you have administrative expenses and all that kind of stuff. Just some thoughts about those issues. I think you'll find in your own constituencies, you probably heard already, there are many people who are frustrated with that process. So in essence, Jim Crawford, St. Mary's, first of hopefully many churches to come, and those are the points we'd like to address. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. As always, we listen very closely to your comments, and we appreciate your multiple visits here. I think it's important to note, I was going to wait till later in the meeting, but I'm going to throw it out there now. We just had a storm report published and produced after our April 18th flooding in Downers Grove, and that identifies, I think there's 20 new projects on top of the 20 or so that we've already done, and there's a whole nother number in the middle that are ongoing.
Yeah, I even see, not to interrupt, I apologize, that you move forward a project from next year to this year to help those people that live on Sterling, which I'm sure they're very grateful for that to happen.
The point is that we as a council and as an organization have tried very hard to come up with ways to fund those projects. And in this case, our long-range plan outlines the future of this village and this organization. A big part of that is our stormwater utility. We will continue to monitor the utility and the proceeds that come in, the revenues that come in, and try to match those up with projects that are desperately needed by our residents, so we try to help alleviate some of the flooding. So thank you for your comments. We appreciate them as always.
Thank you, sir.
Any other public comments or questions tonight? Last chance, no others? Okay, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is item number 5, council member reports. Commissioner Barnett?
I have nothing.
Commissioner Olson?
No report.
Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have actually 2 items I want to report on, so I'll utilize the time for my colleagues who have more reports. First, I just want to report out, last week, many of us actually attended the Economic Development Corporation's first Cornerstone Awards luncheon. This luncheon was brand new thought that came about under the leadership of Michael Casa, and it was to recognize companies within Downers Grove that have made major contributions to the community or came into the community, and there was a certain criteria that had to be met. And the 3 that were awarded the Cornerstone Award at this luncheon, first was Midwestern University. There was no order. It was just large, medium, and small, I believe, is kind of the way that the mayor had presented them. Second was FlavorChem, and third was Shop and Save, the new grocery store in the former Dominic's and other store locations that took place on the south side on 75th and Lamont Road. There were over 350 attendees in the audience, and the guest speaker was the president and CEO of Advocate Healthcare, Jim Scoobsburg, who had a very interesting presentation with their views, his views on the healthcare industry. So it was a well-received luncheon, and based on the attendees, based on the amount of feedback, positive feedback that was given, I can see this as an ongoing event. Second, I wanted to, in light of with the awards that were given, especially to Midwestern University, I had the opportunity to participate in the Midwestern University's annual golf outing this past Friday, and the Dr. G had requested that we let everybody know that they are all invited to the Midwestern University's clinical campus dedication. The entire community is invited to learn about the new Midwestern University Clinical Campus and Multi-Specialty Clinic at a special dedication event on July 16th from 5 to 7 p.m. The clinic is located at 3450 Lacey Road in Downers Grove. The event will include refreshments and guided tours of the state-of-the-art facility. The Midwestern University Clinical Campus is more than 113 million community investments designed to bring quality, affordable health care to DuPage County and the surrounding areas. The multi-specialty clinic features fully licensed practitioners and graduate-level students who work together to provide a wide range of health care. The state-of-the-art Dental Institute has already begun treating patients and offers a high-quality dental care at about half the cost. The clinic will also include a family medicine practice, speech-language clinic, optometry services, and other health services. For additional information about the multi-specialty clinic, please call 630-743-4500, or you can visit them online at www.mwuclinic.com or MidwesternUniversityClinic.com abbreviated. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ozek?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to, since we've moved this up in the meeting, I normally would save it for the end, but I'd like to wish everybody a happy, safe, and healthy Independence Day. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner?
I want to remind everyone about the 4th of July parade. It begins at 12:45, steps off at Main Street and Grand Street, and travels south on Main, ending at Warren Avenue. If you are marching in the parade, our Downers Grove website has the list of sections by organization where you need to meet your group. And then there's also fireworks that are sponsored by the Village of Downers Grove and Woodridge, and they begin at 9:30 at 75th Street in Vermont. Hope to see you there.
Thank you. Just one quick thing. On June 21st, many of us were very happy to be invited to a special recognition for our very own Chief Porter. Chief Porter took office as the president of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. That one always gets me. There was a multi-day conference here at the Doubletree Hotel in Downers Grove. Chief Porter has been a longtime member of that organization and is going to put Downers Grove on the map as far as the police department and police associations around our state. Being there and hearing all the accolades for not only Chief Porter but all the other folks that were in attendance, especially some of the fallen officers throughout the state, was very moving. This organization will allow us to have access to a lot of different opportunities across the state, and I'm very excited for Chief Porter. Just wanted to wish him well and good luck in that position. That's all I had, so I think we'll move on to the next item. Item number 6 is public hearings. We have no public hearing tonight. Item number 7 is our consent agenda. There are 9 items on our consent agenda, and if I would like to call for a motion for the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from the audience on the consent agenda this evening?
Good evening, Mayor Newstead, Commissioners and staff. I'm Gordon Goodman, and I live at 5834 Middle. I'd like to comment on your items D and E, I believe they are. They're resolutions authorizing a real estate contract on certain properties. And these are properties that have drainage significance, as the mayor touched on perhaps earlier. I'm very much in support of this program of acquiring these properties, and it's been going on in the village for some time. 40 years ago, in 1973, I was the chairman of the Mayor's Committee on Floodplain Acquisition, and we prepared a report in August that year. I'll send a copy of the cover of this report to you and the staff to remind you of it. And many of our recommendations are consistent with what the village is now doing. One recommendation in particular seems to have been implemented by cooperation between the village, the Park District, and the Forest Preserve District, and that is the acquisition of several acres of land at the intersection of 40th and Glendenning. And that's been a very successful preservation of flood areas, marshes. It's not really a critical floodway, but it is an area that would repeatedly flood and cause problems in the neighborhood. But now that most of the houses in that area have been eliminated and the land has been managed in an appropriate way for drainage relief, it's working out very well. Originally, the village thought that acquiring this land, they would build some concrete or other drainage structure. But I'm glad to say that after further study, it was decided in cooperation with the Forest Preserve District and Park and the county that it would be better to manage it as a natural area, which it is now. And that's particularly relevant to your proposed acquisition of the property at 3944 Sterling, which adjoins this already owned public land. And it's an area, this particular area that I visited today, and it's clearly not one of the better properties in the neighborhood. There have been some really grand new structures built there that overlook this public land, and I'm very pleased with that development too, that it is a major amenity for that area. So my point of getting up is to say that I'm very pleased that you're moving ahead with this, and also with the acquisition of the property over on Lee Street at 4407 Lee Street. I visited that today, and it's clearly a property that has had some problems. There's a dumpster out in front, and the property immediately south of that seems to be deserted. Maybe the village already owns it. If it doesn't, it should certainly try to acquire a 4409. And the property next south of that is not a very distinguished property. It's not on the market right now, but I'm hoping that if it does come on the market, the village will be interested in that. While I was out exploring, I did go over to another neighborhood that has some village acquisitions along it. It's a neighborhood that I'm not going to mention in the public meeting, but one that the manager and I have talked about in 2011. And I noticed that in that area, we actually have a floodway as well as floodplain that is occupied by current structures. The village missed out on an opportunity to purchase a foreclosed structure in the floodway in 2011, but I noticed that a structure that's even more centrally located in the floodway is now on the market. And I'll send the manager and attorney the information about that, as well as the relevant interactive maps from the village website. And as I say, a copy of my report that, well, Commissioner Wally Brown was one of the members of that committee. We had members from the Sanitary District, the Park District, the Plan Commission, and that committee's report was one of the major features in the village's application to be recognized as an All-American City in the League of Cities annual meeting in 1974. So you have a very good, a very strong tradition of working on things like this. I'm very pleased to see you and the staff picking up that train of thought and moving ahead with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman, and thank you for taking a tour of the village today. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda from the audience? Seeing none, any questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Olson?
Just wanted to comment on the two intergovernmental agreements that we have here. I think this is another, and I've highlighted these a number of times, but this is another great way that we're working with our partner communities and agencies in the surrounding area to share services, to reduce cost for all our stakeholders, whether in Downers Grove, Westmont, and the other communities. So I think this is a great way that we in Downers Grove are working collaboratively, and look forward to staff bringing more of these forward as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Newstead?
Aye. The matter passes unanimously. On to item number 8 of our agenda, the active agenda. There is no active agenda tonight. So on to number 9, our first reading. Traditionally, we turn this part of our meeting over to our Village Manager Dave Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. There are two items on tonight's first reading agenda. The first is consideration of a plan development amendment for the property at 950 75th Street. And our Community Development Director, Tom Daberiner, will present this item.
Good evening. There we go. We do have an ordinance that's been prepared to amend Plan Development Number 24, the Fairmount Village 2 area with a variation to permit construction of 14 townhouses where, I'm not sure that this is exactly right now that I read this, where a different number would be permitted under the existing Plan Development Agreement. Here is the location along 75th, east of Main Street, on the north side of 75th. It was the location of a single-family home a few years ago. That home is no longer there. What is being proposed, and I'll just lay in kind of a rough idea of the townhouse and locations. I realize that's small, so let's take a little bit closer look. 7 units in 2 buildings each, so the total of 14, along with the detention shown on the left side, which is the west side. Here's kind of a colorized version of the site plan, along with some of the landscaping that's being proposed. Connection would be along Stokely Road to the east. And here is what the site looks like today, not the townhomes in the distance, but the site itself in the foreground. Certainly be improved with, let's see here, with these structures. Here is a representation of the front and back and side of the buildings that are being proposed. So what we have, again, is an amendment to Plan Development Number 24, which was first created in 1984 in the village with 138 townhouses plus 1 single-family house. The subject property where the single-family house was is almost 1.5 acres in size and zoned R5A townhouse residential. So a zoning that's more appropriate for townhouses as we are considering it. There is a proposal to construct the 2 7-unit townhouse buildings, which requires a small increase in density from 10.89 units per acre to 11.65. That actually should say about 4 units, not 1 unit. DuPage County, in looking at this, requires that access come from Stockley Road, not a direct access on 75th, as the single-family house had. As we have done recently in these situations, a homeowners association would be set up, which would be supported by a special service area. That takes a little bit of time, but we would go through that process. They have agreed to do that, and that would be in place to preserve and maintain the stormwater detention facility. Here's the analysis. All of the open space and bulk requirements are met. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan, which asks for diversity of housing. Certainly this provides that, adds to that. It's consistent with the zoning ordinance, as I indicated. That's R5A, which is specifically targeting townhouses. We would add an eastbound stop sign required at Stockley, the intersection of Stockley and Canterbury for those exiting the subdivision. The Plan Commission met on June 3rd for this one. Staff concurs with the recommendations, which include an agreement that the standards were met for granting a density variation under Section 28.1803 of the Municipal Code, as well as standards were met for amending the Plan Development Agreement, which can be found under Section 28.1607 of the Municipal Code. Based on public comment that evening, more landscaping was proposed and provided already by the applicant in response to that request. Be happy to try to answer any questions. And
okay, I think first we'll go to questions or comments from the audience on this item. Seeing none, hearing none. Any questions or comments from the Village Council? Commissioner Rankin?
So the reason we're asking for the density variation, just to be clear, is because it was a part of this planned unit development. And if it wasn't, then it would have satisfied the requirements. Is that correct?
It's actually slightly higher than what we would have allowed today, but it was, the density of the planned development was below what our standards are today. So they could do more automatically based on those standards, and then they're asking for a little bit beyond that.
Okay. And then I know that part of the plan talked about a turnaround area beyond the development for emergency vehicles.
Correct. That kind of hammerhead approach is being provided where they can pull into the site and then back out into this area before exiting.
Okay. Will we allow visitors to park in that area then, or will that be a no parking?
Not as currently designed.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, I think we're done with that. Thank you, Mr. Dabereiner. And next item?
The next and final item on tonight's first reading agenda is consideration of an award of contract for over $2.2 million for road resurfacing. And here to present the information on this item is our Public Works Director, Nan Newland.
Good evening. A motion is requested to award a contract for the 2013 Resurfacing B project to Central Blacktop Company of LaGrange, Illinois, in the amount of $2,217,888.20. This contract is one component of the 2013 road maintenance program, which also includes the 2013 Resurfacing A contract, which is substantially underway at this time, and the 2013 Preventative Seal contract, which is complete. Both were previously approved by Council earlier this year. The 2013 roadway patching contract will be bid at a later date. The scope of work for this contract includes resurfacing the streets shown. We have a list that was included in the packet and shown here. These are the streets that we will be resurfacing this year under this contract. It will include a layer of new milling with a layer of new asphalt, along with pavement patching and curb and gutter repair where needed. A call for bids was published and 4 bids were received. Central Blacktop was the low bidder and has satisfactorily completed the village's 2006, 2007, 2012 resurfacing A project, and they are also in the process of working on the 2013 resurfacing A project at this time and have been performing satisfactory work for us. And we do recommend approval of this contract to Central Blacktop. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Nan. Any questions or comments from members of the audience on this item? Seeing none, any questions or comments from members of the council on this item? Hearing none, it looks like a lot of work getting done once again this year, a lot of infrastructure improvement. Thank you, Nan.
That ends our first reading tonight, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. On number 10 on our agenda, Mayor's report. I'll go back to the storm report real quick. I kind of glossed over it, and Mr. Baker was kind enough to pull that up for us. The storm report identifies and takes a look at our storm water structures and infrastructure as it related to the storm event in April. There's a lot of very good information in this report, a lot of engineering information about hydrographs and photos and all sorts of interesting things to dive into to see what really happened in not only that day, but the days leading up to it and after. It gives us a number of projects to look at going forward and confirms and reaffirms a lot of the things that we have been doing in our village. So for some light reading, you can check that out. It's right on the front page of our website.
I just wanted to add, Mayor Pro Tem, that we are also looking to engage residents in public meetings to learn more about their reactions to our preliminary recommendations, and that'll help us move forward with final recommendations. The dates of those meetings have not yet been set, but we should get those out right after the Independence Day holiday.
And we will post those in all of our normal spots, social media, our website, and Downers Grove Television, I'm sure. Thank you. That ends my report, so we're on to item number 11, Manager's report.
I think we covered it just now. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 12, Attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Only one item to present this evening. That is an ordinance approving a planned development amendment to Plan Development Number 24, the Fairmount Village 2, to allow the construction of 2 7-unit townhome buildings at 950 75th Street. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 13, Council Member New Business. Any new business from members of the Village Council? Seeing none, item 14, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for coming tonight. Happy Independence Day.
Nice job. Nice. Yeah.